So everybody is hoping to get into the college football playoff, and in order to do that, you need the right quarterback, and the transfer portal is a popular place to find it. Take a guy like Cam Ward. He was really an example of two transfer portal journeys. Incarnate Word to Washington State, then Washington State to Miami. So we want to know, who is the next Cam Ward? The two versions of Cam Ward. So for that, we bring in Richard Johnson, national college football writer for CBS Sports, to help with this fun discussion. And RJ, I'll start with the first version of Cam Ward, and that is somebody who came from a non-power conference program to a power conference program and continued to light it up. So who is one guy that moved around and had a similar trajectory that comes to mind when you think of non-power to power?
I think the thing with Cam Ward that you have to put into perspective is that Cam had everything around him at Miami. Damian Martinez, Xavier Restrepo at wide receiver, great offensive line. He had all those pieces around him in that situation, and then was obviously outstanding himself. But I am going to go a little bit off the beaten path here, Emily. First one I have for you is Matthew Sluka. Now, he's not arriving at a power. James Madison is itself not a power, but he is reuniting with head coach Bob Chesney, offensive coordinator Dean Kennedy, who he was with at Holy Cross before all of them moved on. James Madison's quarterback situation is in flux. Alonzo Burnett got hurt in the season finale last year, and he may not even be cleared to go until August. And then James Madison also brought in Camden Coleman, who was much more of a thrower than Sluka. But Sluka rushed for over 3,000 yards at James Madison, and he ran for 250 yards in just 3 games at UNLV, including against Kansas in a game he frankly willed UNLV to the victory. So this guy can scoot, and he's going to be a part of this offense, whether it's as the starting quarterback or a change of pace signal caller who you bring in with a Wildcat package or something like that. He's going to be a part of this system. He knows this system. He knows these coaches. And for me, he's an intriguing player because when I look at all the transfer quarterbacks in this last cycle, I don't really see a Cam Ward, a guy who jumps out at me as a guy who was great where he was, prolific where he was, and going to a situation in the power conference that is ready-made for him to supernova smoke.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't see a Cam Ward type of player that can go and just be Superman on a big-time level. But there's some guys out there that they fit the bill, and they have enough within them to, be somewhat of an impact. I'm going to go with my man, Mark Gronkowski. We're talking about our guy, the Jackrabbits. Heisman Trophy winner in the FCS level. That's a Walter Payton Award. 2-time national champion. And when you bring in a veteran like that into your building, what you're getting is a quarterback that's done it. Skins on the wall. Has played in every adverse situation. And has shown everybody that at the end of the day, when you have a veteran guy like that in your building, I'm going to give you a chance to get to 8 wins, get an extension from everybody else. And if everything goes right, he's a win-with quarterback. We can get to 10 and possibly challenge for either conference championship or find a way like Indiana did into the college football playoffs.
Smoke, I love what you say there when you talk about like a win-with guy. I mean, for God's sakes, it's Iowa. All you need is a win-with guy because you know that Iowa, the infrastructure around him, that team is not going to beat themselves. They're going to play great defense. They're going to play excellent special teams. They're going to be good in all 3 phases. So just don't hold us back. And I think a guy like Cade McNamara, for instance, last year, it held them back. And it was difficult for them to use his transfer in from Michigan, and it just didn't work out. So maybe Gronowski is the guy. I am also going to look at Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza comes to Indiana from Cal. And Fernando Mendoza threw for 3,000 yards in 11 games last season. This guy can throw the ball. Don't get it twisted. He's going to get Elijah Surratt back, who is a tremendous wide receiver for Indiana this season. I really like Fernando Mendoza slotting into this Indiana offense, pistol-based system. It's a little bit plug and play here, and having a season like Curtis Schwartz did last year. Now, I think the running game is going to be a little bit different around him. Obviously, a running game is a quarterback's best friend. With Roman Hemby coming in from Maryland, you don't know how much Hemby's going to be able to give you in the ground game. So it's going to be a little bit different around him. But I like Fernando Mendoza as a big-framed passer and a guy who gives you, frankly, a lot of passion. We all remember the post-game on-field, everybody's rushing the field after they win that game at the end of the season, and he's talking about, this is what college football is about. He's a guy who's a leader, and he's a guy who leads with passion, and he's a guy who can get other people on that team to rally around him.
Richard, perfect fit again, man. When you look at it, it's almost rinse and repeat. You have a guy that comes in, understands how to play college football, plays from the pocket. You don't have a need to have a mobile guy that sit around and run around all the time. He's running really play action RPO series. So when you put him in that situation with Roman Hemby, and Roman Hemby is a better pass receiver than people give him credit for, and a dynamic player with the ball in his hands, he's fitting in the perfect situation, again, with that system in Indiana of just coming in, rinse and repeat. We're not going to ask you to win many games. We're just going to ask you to be a part of it. And when you're called upon just to win one or two, you just got to make a few plays and get this thing done.
All right, so that was the first version of the Cam Ward transfer, but by the time he was at Washington State, we all knew who Cam Ward was. Everybody wanted a piece of him, and Miami was the school that was able to convince him to not go to the NFL and instead become a Hurricane and transform their offense, going from 43rd, their passing offense, to 3rd in 2024. So we want to know the instant impact guy. RJ, who can come in and flip your offense immediately in the transfer portal?
How about Preston Stone with Northwestern? Now, I don't think Northwestern's finishing 3rd in total offense, but they finished worse than 100th last season. So you literally don't have anywhere to go but up. Smoke was talking about Mark Gronowski, South Dakota State, a few quarterbacks ago. Gronowski hit Griffin Wilde plenty of times at South Dakota State. Preston Stone will hit Griffin Wilde plenty of times at Northwestern. Wilde is an FCS transfer up wide receiver. He's one of the most intriguing FCS transfers in the country. Stone, I think, it got a little squirrely there. He lost a job to Kevin Jennings early in the season, and we really haven't heard much from him all season, but he can chuck the rock, as you're seeing on the screen right there. And I see Griffin Wilde downfield being the recipient of many a deep ball from Preston Stone, who you should not forget about as a transfer quarterback, even though he didn't really play last season.
Yeah, 2023 version of Preston Stone was real good. 24, not so much. But the guy that lit it up was John Mateer. 1,000-yard rusher, 3,000-yard pass from Wazoo, transferring over to Oklahoma with his offensive coordinator, the guy that unlocked him, made him look like one in a million type of player. When you want a dual threat guy, a guy that you can put the ball on the shoulder and say, go out and let's win this game. He has that ability to do that. Now he's coming and playing the SEC. Oklahoma needs some things around him, but this is a guy that you don't need many weapons around him in order for him to truly impact the game. And now we're talking about just guys that with perfect fits and impact. My little pocket rocket, Thomas Castellanos. I've been pumping this guy up over and over again, Richard. He is the perfect type of player to go in there and fit with the Gus bus. Gus Malzahn, the offensive coordinator, that wants a dual threat quarterback. But a lot of people don't give Thomas Castellanos enough credit for being an efficient passer. For a little guy, he can wing it, swing the ball out on the one pass, when I mean get it out of his hands quickly, operate in the RPO world. And when things break down, he's magic with the ball in his hands.
Smoke, I don't have questions about John Mateer's personal ability, but I do have questions about the infrastructure around him on offense. You're turning over that entire wide receiver room. You're losing Nick Anderson, who's your best wide receiver. He's transferred out. You've got a new offensive coordinator who obviously worked with him at Washington State. But the weight of the program right now is on this change in both offensive coordinator and quarterback. They have to succeed. So again, Mateer can play, on that we agree on, but I just have questions about the infrastructure around him and the offense you're dropping him in. But my last quarterback is going to be Miller Moss. Miller Moss getting with Jeff Brom at Louisville, who's a tremendous play caller, and then teaming up with Colin Lacey. Lacey gets hurt in the beginning of the season and then opts out the rest of the regular season, does play in the bowl game, but opts out the rest of the regular season for Louisville. At least you get Lacey back, so you have a tremendous target for Miller Moss. I think there was a lot of problems on that USC offense that were beyond Moss. I think it is true that Moss does press a little bit, puts the ball in bad places, does create turnovers that aren't really there, but at his best, I think Miller Moss, although a little undersized, can fit in this Louisville system and be really, really good pickup for the Cards.
Gotta say, I like the John Mateer comparison for the standpoint of that he shared a quarterback room at Washington State with Cam Ward. So definitely fits the assignment there, but some valid questions. So we do this fun thing on our show, RJ, where we ask people to submit their ultimate burning questions. And we usually take them at the end of the show, but we got one that kind of applied to this one when we're talking about Thomas Castellanos at Florida State. So we're going to go ahead and answer that question. It is very simple. Will Florida State win more than 7 games this season with Thomas Castellanos as their quarterback? We'll start with you, RJ. What do you think?
Win more than 7 games. Let's talk about winning more than 2 before we start winning more than 7.
They're getting kind of greedy.
This Florida State team, we talk about they only won 2 games. Like it cannot be worse, all right? It just cannot be worse than it was last year. You have to think at some point in time, water is going to find its level. And I think the identity that Thomas Castellanos brings them, it's going to be a physical, run-first identity, which they were so poor at. You can talk about the fact that they weren't good in the passing game, all that sort of stuff. They got bullied up and down that schedule by just about everybody they played. You've got to reassert dominance physically. And I think Castellanos, a QB-centric run game that Lord knows Gus Malzahn will bring that. I mean, they might be running the doggone single wing for all we know. That physical identity for Florida State is going to be key in just getting them back to, as you say, 7 games, finding itself. But yeah, I think Florida State can give you 7. They got them with the talent that they have on that roster.
Yeah, RJ, I'm going to back up on this one and say no. I think there's too much. I think what we saw from Florida State last year was, like you said, they physically got beat up on offense and defense. And even though they added some playmakers around them, I just don't believe their defense and their mentality overall as a program is ready to get back into the 7 to 8 win series. Love the quarterback play. I just don't think he has enough around him to be that guy for 7 to 8 wins.
It's crazy that they went undefeated just 2 seasons ago and we're haggling over 7 wins, but that's what happens when, like you said, they only won 2. Richard Johnson, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate the great conversation. You can check out more of his work at CBS Sports.